Okay, I've got the recording going, so you can call it to order at your pleasure.
Okay, so it is now 3:33, and we'll call this month's meeting of the Ethics Review Board to order. First item on the agenda is the certification. So Chair will entertain a motion to certify that we are conducting this via Zoom due to COVID issues, and that we're meeting public brain freeze for a minute. That we're meeting our public disclosure requirements.
Information being picked up.
I know.
You have to open them.
So moved. Makes sense.
Is there a second?
Second, that's Wanda.
Thank you, Wanda. Been moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor? Vote by
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstention? Motion carried. Thanks. Next item on the agenda is the approval of last month's meeting. I hope all the members had an opportunity to take a look at the meeting minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to accept the minutes from last month's meeting.
So moved.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second to accept the minutes from last month's board meeting. Any unreadiness, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, vote by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right. So next we will have the discussion from the monthly report from the Office of Inspector General. Mr. Harper?
Can you hear me? I'm having some technical difficulties here.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, well, I can see most of you. We have nothing else to add to the written monthly report that we submitted. There are a couple of items that I want my senior staff team to comment on. And other than that, I will take any questions regarding the information we provided in the monthly report. Would you like me to proceed though, Dr. Ricks, with the comments from at least Patrice Sullivan regarding recent litigation related matter that the Office of Inspector General is engaged with at this time?
Please do.
Okay. All right. I'll just describe it briefly, and then I'll let Patrice give you some more details. As the members of the board understand, that is the Office of Inspector General, has the authority to seek documents from third parties, usually under the auspices of whatever the contractual relationship is between that entity and the city of New Orleans. In other instances, we also can compel, when those informal methods don't work, an entity to turn over information by subpoena. We have to seek court approval, and we have done so in a particular case that I'll let Patrice describe to you very briefly. Since the matter is still pending, we won't go into as much detail as we will have to perhaps later, but I thought you needed to know about this. Patrice.
Okay, we initiated an audit of the Orleans Parish Communications District because it scored, if you will, third on our risk assessment. In connection with that audit, we sent a subpoena to the CPA firm who has conducted the last two audits of the communications district. We thought it was going okay, and we expected to get compliance on that subpoena right after we sent that subpoena, we sent a letter request to the Orleans Parish Communications District asking for specified documentation. The letter request asked for documentation of all of their bank account statements and, different financial information, different buckets of financial information, not only of their payroll account, which is funded by city funds, but of other accounts. And the reason we did that is because there's commingling. And if you look at the case law and history of audits of public entities, once there's commingling, we generally get access to all the documents to trace those funds. Well, while we were waiting for compliance of the CPA subpoena, the OPCD director got involved and told their CPA they could not waive communications with us. There's a state privilege with a CPA which basically says they can't speak to anybody about the audit unless the auditee waives that privilege. They specifically did not waive the privilege. They also stated they didn't want the CPA to give us any records that had anything to do with funds other than the city funds. That CPA, out of an abundance of caution to avoid any lawsuit against her, filed a protective order in CDC. And then we received notification back from OPCD that they would not comply with our request insofar as it addressed any disclosure of any information not specifically pertaining to the city funds, which are what's called the payroll funds. So they filed a motion in CDC basically asking the court to, help the CPA out or not to stop us, basically to stop us. So I responded with a motion to compel the CPA, a motion to compel the OPCD. It's a very long opposition. I consolidated it all, and on July 23rd, we expect to have a hearing on that. I've notified the city attorney. She knows what the issues are, and that's where we are on that. Any questions?
Any questions from the board members? Seeing none, again, this is pretty complex, so we'll stay tuned to hear how this progresses. If I understood, Derek, you said there were a couple issues. Was there another?
No, sir, we're going to report out on the Sewage and Water Board billing dispute audit evaluation that was issued later in June, but we'll do so at our next board meeting, at the next ERB meeting. But that project is completed as indicated by the release of the final report, and all members of the board should have received the copy when it was officially released. But other than that, and what's in our monthly report, I didn't have anything else at this time to bring to the attention of the board.
Okay, appreciate it. Are there any questions for the Office of Inspector General regarding either the monthly report or the litigation issues that they're dealing with at this point? All right, seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion of the Quality Assurance Review Advisory Committee's report. Before I open up to for discussion with the members, again, I'd like to just take the opportunity to thank the committee for their work on the Quality Assurance Review. And again, hope that these processes will continue to grow and strengthen to help us all, help the city, help the ERB, and the EIG does its job better as we move forward. So with that, I will ask if there are any comments and discussion regarding the Quality Assurance Review Committee's report.
Well, I'll jump in just to make a few brief comments. Again, I want to join Joe in thanking the committee for all of its hard work in that difficult process. I would say that I agree with the committee's assessment that there was an improvement in work performance and in output from 2018 to 2019, but that the output from the office, the amount of work is still not commensurate with its budget. Part of that has to do with issues involving staffing and other things, but a general sense that while there has been marked improvement, which is good, the office is still not functioning at the level that would justify its budget. And I think that's shown in the fact that I understand the office actually returned back to the city a substantial amount of money that was essentially not used. And while it's good that that happened, it's bad in my view because that money is earmarked under our city charter for the work of this office, and that money is intended to be used for that purpose. And if it's not being used for that purpose, that's not a good thing overall. So I want to compliment the Inspector General for an improvement in work performance, but also, you know, express optimism and hope and a concern that he will continue to improve and expand the output such that hopefully in the coming year he won't have to turn back a substantial part of the budget. Now, I also want to join in the concern about not complying with the ordinance requirement that expenses be attributed to a particular work products and efforts. That's a pretty clear ordinance requirement as I see it, and it does not appear to me that that's happened. And so I would just call upon the Inspector General's office to not, you know, allow that to happen again, so that in the next coming year, his office is able to allocate and apportion expenditures to particular projects and the particular work of the office, so that the public can know and understand how its money is being used and that it's getting the return on that money. So that's kind of where I am. Again, I'm encouraged with the progress. Would like to call upon the Office of Inspector General to improve.
Any other comments? Any other comments? So with that,
Mr. Chair, if there are no more comments from members of the board or questions, I would like to respond.
okay, okay, fine. I had some final comments, but go ahead, Derek.
First of all, I thank Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Bana, and Ms. Barrier for the hard work that they put in. We are, for example, already preparing for the peer review that will be conducted next year by gathering documents and information necessary to meet our responsibilities for that outside, and I'm sorry, I should use the word external review of how we're operating. Mr. Brown and I should have had long discussions about many issues during my 2-year tenure here. I would just point out that actually returning funds to the city is a sign that we have not that we have managed the resources given to us well, and that the reasons, at least in terms of salaries, not operational expenses, that we're returning funds is because we have been deliberate about adding staff and about expanding the staff, trying to find the right individuals. In addition to that, something that I disclosed to this board, but maybe the new members do not, is that at the beginning of my term as Inspector General, which was February of 2018, unbeknownst to the board because it was not subject to public disclosure, there was a criminal investigation being conducted by the Attorney General's office that later resulted in a matter being referred to the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office, which resolved the case with the individual that was the subject of that matter. I cleared with the DA's office the ability to discuss that, but I didn't get that clearance until sometime in 2019. You might want to ask me, or the question might arise as to why am I bringing that up now? One of the reasons we did not remove staff and add staff at any greater rate is that almost every member of the staff that was on board in December of 2017 potentially could have been a witness to some of these matters. In addition to that, it was my decision, and my decision alone, not to come in and remove staff until they were given an opportunity to show that they were performing at a level of professionalism and work ethic to meet the standards that the citizens here deserve. So the slowness in both removing staff or hiring staff I am accountable for that. But there were other factors that were involved in why I haven't added staff. I'll give you one example since you heard from Patrice Sullivan. We interviewed at least 25 candidates for the general counsel's position. We had—
I'm on my call.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, continue.
Oh yeah, we interviewed at least 25 individuals who were competing for that position. We received almost 50 applications. These are not easy jobs. I like to say, without getting too sentimental, we're not heroes, but we are highly experienced professionals, but not everybody can do this kind of work. So the one thing that I do regret is not being able to hire line staff, that is additional auditors and investigators, to expand our footprint because we'll have the resources. What I would say, Mr. Brown, is that returning that money to the city because we didn't find the right people or we had other challenges, including, as we've said, the civil service system, which requires quite a bit of work sometimes to meet all of its detail, is a good thing in the sense that we were able to do more with less. Now, that means that I'm sticking my neck out saying that when we accomplish that, that is adding the right people who can not only do the work, but do it at a high level, then we will be able to produce more if you, in fact, don't think that that is the only thing that we're about, is the numbers or the statistics. I would match the quality of the work product we've issued against any inspector general's office in the country, that is local or state. The feds have tremendous resources, so it wouldn't be fair. I would submit to you that if you look at the work product and the quality starting in 2016 and 2017, there was a noticeable drop. In addition to that, as all of you are aware, except for the new members, when I started in February of 2018, we were engaged first and foremost in trying to quell what was basically a feud between two factions in the office. All of this has been reported. Because I am reluctant to talk about personnel matters internal, I didn't say much about it then, and I'm not saying much about it now, except to say that with this board's oversight, that is the Ethics Review Board exercising its authority to require and mandate that we discuss the matters that we're working on, I believe that we will not only be more productive, but will have a more significant impact. But it would be remiss of me not to just point out, especially to the new members, and maybe Mr. Blumenthal wasn't aware of this, and just how deeply divided a unit there was when I arrived in to start this job. Now, we still have issues, including finding the right people who agree not only with the approach that I set, but the vision and mission of the office, because those kinds of professionals are highly sought after and are paid more money than what we can usually pay them under our salary structure. So I look forward to continued oversight by the Ethics Review Board, by the next Quality Assurance Review Advisory Committee, because that's the way we're going to reestablish that not only quality counts, it is one of the critical factors in the impact of the projects that we're doing. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. So just a few thoughts and comments, particularly as last meeting as chair of this body, but also my term will be ending, well, actually officially ending next month. And once a replacement is on, I'll be moving on. But over the 7 years and looking at and seeing the reports, I really think for us as a review board, as an oversight board, one of the things that we may need to look at, the Quality Assurance Review Committee is a separate, it's not our entity, and it's by statute independent in what it does. But I think it would be to the benefit of future committees as well as to ours as an oversight body to provide some level of guidance or recommended practice to ensure that we get some level of consistency in what's looked at and how it's looked at, while allowing each committee to bring its own flavor, discussions, thoughts to the process. I think that's very important because this committee is a politically important committee in that it gives some citizen input into what's happening within the office. From a quality standpoint, to ask a group of citizens to come in and judge the quality of the work of an inspector general is unfair. It's unfair because in order to have a quality assessment, there has to be a set standard. You can't have varying standards when trying to assess quality or what you think at the time. That doesn't work, never worked. It's not a good practice in any form. During my career as a Baldrige examiner, accreditation examiner, I have evaluated quality in a lot of different areas, and never has there been no standards or criteria which to judge by. And I don't think it's fair that we ask citizens to do that. So with that, I think it would be incumbent upon the ERB to have, again, some type of practices, not necessarily a set standard, but things to look at, maybe even ways to checklist to provide some consistency in the report. And also the process. One of the interesting things that came out of this review committee, well, actually there were two. One was talked about a lot during the presentation of never having conversations with the Inspector General's office. And it was interesting in that I listened and I heard both sides of that argument. I think both sides made some sense. However, I think it would have been, and I think it is incumbent on us to, if we could have provided some guidance in that there should always be, probably, at least in my view, some conversation between the evaluator and the evaluatee. When and at what point, I'm not sure. But some connection, some conversation, I think would have been critical in either way. The very first report that I received, I had the exact same questions as this last report that I've received. And the interesting things that came from totally different aspects. The first report was very, very glowing of the work and the amount of work. And the descriptors were awesome. And the question came to mind, and then, okay, based on what? What was the objective measure that was used to make this determination about this amount of work? Didn't get a good answer. Didn't get a good answer, I don't think this time, as to why this amount of work per se is below standard. So with that, again, I think there's some work and some improvement that can be done in this process to make this process more valuable. And I just thought that I would share my thoughts and views on that, particularly with me leaving the board, for new members to think about and consider as we move forward and bring on the next Quality Assurance Committee. Again, a very important part of the process, a lot of work. And those are just some of my thoughts as we move forward. I think before we go to the next item, I would be remiss if I didn't give Mr. Blumenthal an opportunity to say a few words. If you could take it a couple minutes, if you wish, Mr. Blumenthal.
Thank you, Dr. Rick. I really don't have that much to add to what we said at our public meeting. I would point out that the ordinance is done by the city council, so it would not be, you all could recommend the city council make a change, but you all wouldn't have the authority, I don't believe, to add certain suggestions or criteria. That's not commenting on whether they're good or bad. I think I'm concerned that the Office of Inspector General did criticize us for not meeting with them. We have tried to make the point that our interpretation was that we were to review their report. If their report wasn't clear, it was not our responsibility to amplify it. The report is not to us, the report is to the public. So we really did not agree with that. They also mentioned wanting us to follow the GAGAS standards. That's not in the ordinance either. I mean, as far as we're concerned, frankly, those were red herrings that they threw out there. I think the issue, and I think James brought it up, is that the Office of Inspector General needs to follow the ordinances. It's very clear. Expenses incurred is an example. Also, besides what Mr. Brown brought up, you leave it out without saying that you're even leaving it out because of a cyber attack seems to be insufficient to fulfill the ordinance. Hopefully the Inspector General's office has interim financial statements. They don't just wait till December 31st and then do that. So they could have presented an interim one. So we had some issues. We felt that we could judge it if there are standards. I don't know that you can do standards, but if there's a way to do them, that's something that you all should consider recommending to the city council. That would be. I would certainly be glad to answer any questions. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I have nothing else to add.
Thank you, sir. Great. Okay. All right, with that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda. And that's the monthly report from the Office of Independent Police Monitor.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good deal. Wow, May was a busy month for us. Not as busy as June. June has been even more so, but May was a busy one. Took a number of complaints. double-digit complaints, and then NOPD started clearing out its backlog of disciplinary hearings. So we had 12. We're gonna have even more for June, but you know, we're moving. They're moving those, clearing those out, and a lot of which had come to a halt after the cyber attack, and then we went through Mardi Gras and whatnot. So they're trying to get those done. So Deputy Police Monitor Stella Zemet has her hands full. In addition, we have been working collaboratively with a number of groups in the community that call themselves the NOPD Accountability Coalition. There are a number of grassroots groups, established groups that are just banded together to, and we began dialoguing with them about COVID policing and the issues that we were seeing surrounding that. So we're looking at issues such as NOPD not issuing summonses and arresting people instead when COVID was, you know, and we were very concerned about COVID, as we are again now again, but just working with NOPD about more summonses and less arrests, and then also officers wearing PPE and just a number and checkpoints and just a number of policing issues around COVID. And that group has remained together and continuing to look at issues, which will bring you information about the protests which occurred after the very tragic death of George Floyd and protests surrounding his death and Breonna Taylor and many others. So that group has remained together and is just making good recommendations to NOPD about issues that are going on. So we've been very busy with that outreach, and it's been pretty good. And we'll talk to you about our dealings with NOPD about protests and all next month, as well as the city council. But one of the issues that came out in May, of course, was the task force issue, and this 8th district task force that got caught. First of all, their cases were thrown out because the probable cause was questionable, but then they were caught on body-worn camera trying to make up stories as to how they were going to say incidents were down. OIPM received that complaint originally, along with, it was sent to the chief, and I think maybe a couple of others, but I'm not sure, but we got that over. The chief never said he never received it, but we did, and we did refer that to the Public Integrity Bureau and get them moving on that. And as you know, those officers have been removed from the street and are now under criminal investigation as well. So that was pretty busy, a very busy month. Going forward, we will continue to monitor as many. We've been monitoring protests as well, and we'll continue to monitor as many of those as we can. We are going to stay involved in the investigation of the tear gas incident, which occurred on June 3rd. So we're very heavily into that. There was an officer-involved shooting and pursuit on Saturday morning, which I rolled out to the scene of and we watched, and also involved JPSO, who's under some scrutiny right now as well. We'll be having body-worn cameras soon. So just a lot going on in policing right now. And of course, we're listening to what our community is talking about in terms of reapplying dollars in ways that are more helpful in the community and that lessen the need for policing. And we're going to be involved in some of those conversations. Earlier this year, we started on 2 projects. One, which is about how children are policed in schools, outside of schools, etc. And as we know, there's many calls right now for police not being as involved in that type of incident. And we started a second project called Policing of Those with Mental Illness. And as you know, that's also a call for defunding the police in dealing with those and having folks who are experts in those fields deal with folks who are suffering from mental illness. So we're excited about those projects. They're just getting kicked off, but the children and policing project is on its way. The policing of the mentally ill is still getting started, but we look forward to reporting back to you about those as they go forward. And I think that's it. If you have any questions for me.
Any
Ms.
questions?
Hudson?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Hudson, can you hear me?
I can.
Good. Thanks for your report. You know, we've been seeing terrible coverage about interactions between police and communities And I found myself thinking about you and your office. And maybe there's a longer conversation we should have about this, but I would be interested in your view of what sort of shape our police department is in compared to these other ones that have been involved in these, really devastating activities.
Yeah, in short, I mean, NOPD has done pretty well, and they were doing well until that tear gas incident. But that's been the one hiccup, that incident. And the issue being that NOPD had not used tear gas in probably 30 years. So why on this particular occasion? They're great in dispersing crowds. They do it every weekend in the French Quarter, and they extract people who are doing things they shouldn't be doing without using tear gas. So why did they do that then? City Council held a hearing on it. We went down and talked about that as well with them. So, but I would say overall they've done a lot better. The night before the tear gas incident, they had kneeled with protesters and worked with them to, prevent anything from going on. It had done really well, and people were very impressed with NOPD. And in fact, NOPD was about to get a commendation from City Council before that tear gas incident occurred. But it's brought up a greater issue that we would love to talk to you about more, and that we are talking to NOPD about, and that is the use of these chemical weapons or these military style weapons, which are, if you look at what's happened over the years in other cities, after these tear gas and weapons are used, there are lawsuits and injunctions against using them, and judgments against police departments for the harm that they do because they are imperfect and they are not targeted weapons. And as you know, the use of force is a targeted thing. For the police department to use force against somebody, they have to have a reason under the law to do so, right? So there's got to be legal reason to use it against folks. And what we find out with these types of weapons is they are targeted. They hit people who aren't doing anything wrong. And so we are very much looking forward to continuing to have that conversation with our community, which is leading the way on that, and also with the NOPD, and of course our decision makers.
Let me just follow that if I could with one other thing. So as I understand what you just said, NOPD has done well through this recent period with the exception of that one incident. And what I'm really wondering about is, what sort of shape they're in overall as a department, and whether there's been movement in the right direction because of the consent decree.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. If you just look at officer-involved shootings alone, now we've had the number, we went from 20 to 25 per year when I first got here, which by the way was 10 years ago, a couple weeks ago. Down to 0 times they shot at a human being in 2018. 2019, we went back up, but in each of those incidents, somebody had shot at the police first before they returned fire. So I'm seeing great restraint in the use of deadly force here. And that's huge, because that's what I think was the impetus to get our office finally moved forward, were all the deadly force incidents which occurred around Katrina. So yes, absolutely. Their paperwork is better. Gosh, their reports were just, there either weren't reports or there wasn't documentation, or it was very suspect. So definitely this consent decree has built up their infrastructure. Their training is better. Their supervision is better, especially at the top. But what we're seeing is that close and effective supervision on the ground still needs some work. And one of the things I'd love to see is the community involved more in their decision-making processes. So that's one thing that we've put forward, is having civilians on their recruiting boards, and having civilians on their disciplinary boards, and on their use of force review boards, so the community can weigh in on these things. But has there been change? Yes, much change. But as we can see, there can still be pockets, because policing is so personal and it's incident to incident. You know that there has to be ways to catch these things that are going on.
Thanks very much.
Mr. Chairman, I have 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Ms. Hudson. First, could you send me information, or I don't know how many people's involved in the Children in Policing initiative?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And the second thing, in terms of the body worn cameras, are you aware of how that's funded for NOPD? Meaning, is it a grant or from the feds, or does the money come from our general fund or what have you?
That I'm not as sure of. The issue about who's paying for that. I feel like at the beginning the federal government did kick in some money, but I have to plead ignorance on that. I don't actually know. I can always check on it, but I don't have the answer for you right now.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you and congratulations on 10 years of service.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I never would have thought it, to be honest with you.
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood or I didn't hear correctly. At the beginning, you mentioned something about, I guess, the task force and some type of, I guess, review of criminal activity. And maybe because I'm new to the board, I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to, or if there was previous information that may have been given that I need to review to kind of understand what's going on, or if you can give a quick overview.
Yes, ma'am. And I do apologize for that. It's stuff that's going on in the paper. So I should have prefaced it with saying that there had been some reports that came out in the paper about a complaint that was filed by a public defender about 8th District officers being caught on body-worn camera, making up, trying to fix some arrests, which were basically not good arrests. And as a result of that complaint, which was sent to our office, it was sent to the chief and maybe a couple of other folks. And I think the chief said he never got it, but we did, and we forwarded it to PIB for investigation. Those officers were pulled off the streets and now they're being criminally investigated. But after reviewing that, what they found out is these officers had many cases which were thrown out because their probable cause was suspicious, or it just was lacking, period. And there was just something not right about it. And that kicked off a huge conversation internally. There's a paragraph in the consent decree which calls for the United States Attorney's Working Group, which it consists of judges, the public defender, the district attorney, the OIPM, and of course many NOPD units, FBI, and of course U.S. Attorney. And what's supposed to happen in those discussions, which are supposed to be held monthly, or meeting regularly, is that they're supposed to, if there are issues in the criminal justice system with how NOPD operates, they're supposed to come out in those meetings. Well, the meetings hadn't been held, these discussions hadn't been heard, and then it turns out there is no formal mechanism nor policy or procedure in the district attorney's office for forwarding these issues to NOPD so that they can systematically handle them. Additionally, NOPD's early warning system didn't catch it. It's not actually an early warning system. It takes a while for that system to catch up with complaints and uses of force and whatnot. But in any event, it caused a huge uproar, and the federal consent decree monitors just issued a report which came out on Friday about it. It's about 40 pages. I haven't made it all the way through, but it's very scathing about NOPD supervision on this. There's a new, Vera Institute has a new map out which looks at the number of police officers per capita all around the country, and NOPD has one of the highest. So so that would tell you that you probably should be able to have, since you have so many officers per capita compared to other places, you should be able to have better supervision. But that's still being investigated, and NOPD now has this issue to deal with as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the independent police monitor?
Thank you.
Seeing none. Thank you, Susan. Take care. Next item on the agenda is the report from the ethics trainer.
Good afternoon, everybody. And Eric's with us, so I'll give the report. If there's anything that I leave out, please, Eric, chime in. And first, I want to apologize. I don't know if you all have a copy of my report in front of you, and I'll make sure that I upload that into the portal immediately. But this is just very short. Since the meeting last month, as promised, we reached out to the liaison via an email and reached out to all of them, reminding them of several things, including that we were going to move forward with individual liaison award, that the board has decided to suspend for 1 year the torch award. I let them know that, and that we would that would resume in 2021. I sent for both of those awards. I sent them the qualifications and the requirements for that, just to so that they can be reminded of it and to get started for 2021. The other thing that I did also remind them that they have to, each of them need to maintain their certification as liaisons by taking the 2-hour training in Baton Rouge. There was just one last week, but there's another one in August, another one in October. So I'm just reminding them that they need to sign up for that so that they can continue to do that. I also let them know that I know that things are, because of just their whole situation and kind of their now working conditions, that Eric and I, or we would be glad to help them to reach that 100% goal of training by training some of their staff and some of their leadership. And so some are reaching out and we're just trying to arrange that. I said, as long as we are sort of socially distanced and there's a space where we can do that, we'd be glad to do that in person with them. I had a call from one of the liaisons that felt, and I reached out to the state just to confirm this, but wanted to make sure that, to find out if the state may have suspended the annual requirement for 2020 because of COVID. I let them know that there's no indication of that. They would have posted that on the website, but I reached out directly to the state trainer to find out, just to confirm that that has not been suspended. And I suspect, and I do know that annual training is still required. We intend this summer to meet via Zoom. We're going to meet with all the liaisons just to kind of bring them together all sort of in person like we are right now, sort of virtually. So we're going to continue that. We're going to do that via Zoom. And it's really going to be just kind of a reorganizational discussion. And, the goal this year was to begin some of the leadership training for the liaisons, so that, and kind of skill development. And we're going to try to have a component of that with this first meeting, but I think a lot of it is just to kind of regroup and get everybody back together again. That's basically, that is my report. There's, I don't know if there's anything else that I need to add, but that's where we are. That's where we are right now. Any questions? Or Eric, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you hit it exactly on. The small thing that I would add is that what we have done traditionally in terms of the training for the departments, in addition to what we have offered for the liaisons, the invitation that Tony talked about earlier, it usually comes in clumps, one in the spring and then one in the fall, in terms of where lots of departments just find time in their schedule. It's kind of the natural rhythm of government. And so what it's looking like is, just because of COVID, a lot of the trainings that we'll do, which we normally do just as part of our work, instead of being distributed between the spring and the fall, is probably going to be a very intensive effort, likely in between August, if the social distancing and other kinds of requirements would seem to suggest it, but certainly in September and October will be heavy for our normal in-person trainings, assuming that that restrictions allow. And so while we've done a little bit of training in the fall, the bulk of it will be happening in the fall, if that's the right characterization of it, Tony.
One of the next training that we have up really is actually the Office of Inspector General. They reached out to me, the contact person, all of a sudden I'm forgetting their name, about a month ago, just to talk about specifically what they want. And they really would like to have kind of a more of a targeted training to look at some kind of a deeper dive into some specific areas. Again, the whole, they're getting back to me about finding a place where we can do this, where it would be appropriate. They want it in person, but it's, of course, we just have to adhere to the distance requirement. So we're going through that with them right now. And so, as Eric said, we anticipate doing the bulk of the trainings, you know, COVID permitting, September, October.
And I guess one other additional point is, you know, we know that a lot of the focus has been around targeting specific skills related to leadership, so higher level senior kinds of officials. We began some of that work with the mayor's senior staff, I believe it was last year, and we anticipated continuing and refining it. But a lot of the foundational work to developing that standardized kind of curriculum will continue through the summer, with the anticipation as being part of the large training that we're going to be doing in the fall will include targeted training for that group. And so we'll be developing a lot of that curriculum at the same time developing new materials and for the liaisons as well. So a lot of the curriculum development will be happening in the summer, again, with an eye towards leadership and liaison training in the fall.
Yeah. Questions?
Any questions from any of the board members?
Okay.
Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, the only other thing that I would add, and I think Tony was thinking it too, is
One more thing.
congratulations. Congratulations, Ms. Hudson, on making 10 years. That's huge for the city and for the effort. So congratulations.
All right. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is the report from the Executive Administrator and General Counsel. Dane?
Thank you, Joe. Just had to unmute myself. First, by way of what's on our calendar coming up, tomorrow the terms expire for all the officers, and also Joe's term expires as a board member, both. So he goes out as an officer and as a board member. However, of course, Joe, you're not going to get off that easy, as you and we all well know. Like, for example, James, you are on until we get somebody else to replace you. So hopefully that will move along quickly, but as James knows, it doesn't. James, on replacing you, you've seen some of my emails, but I have not shared all of them with you. I have really incessantly been bothering the mayor's office about this, all to no avail. So I don't really know what else to do other than to continue to harass is probably even the right word, but we've got to get James replaced and soon Joe replaced. But I don't know what more to do. If anybody else has any ideas, maybe when Mike comes on as the new chairperson, effective Wednesday, then we can go ahead and write some letters from Mike and try to keep that going.
I appreciate those efforts. You know, the idea of having a term limit is so that somebody else can come on fresh from the community. So as much as I've enjoyed my tenure on the board and value the work and everything, I do feel like it's time to give somebody else a chance.
Right. Well, we'll keep making efforts to get that done. Also, in the month of July, the Quality Assurance Review Advisory Committee for the Office of the Independent Police Monitor is going to have a public meeting and issue its report. Professor Jancy Hopeful from the Tulane Law School is the chair of that committee, and I've been in contact with her and Ms. Hudson to get that done. And I understand from Jancy that the committee is moving along, and in some emails yesterday or the day before, there are some tentative dates sent around for that meeting, which has to take place before July 31st. So that is going on. Other than that, the next deadline for us isn't until November, and in November we have to work to get our budget finalized, although that's set by the charter, so there's really not a whole lot of budgeting that we do we also have to then repopulate our quality assurance review advisory committees in November. So that's all we have going. Now, also, the last thing that I want to mention, and I talked about this last time, is we need to get a peer review of ourselves. I talked to Kathleen Allen of the state board. She's their executive administrator, about somebody from their organization or board doing the peer review or getting some other suggestions from her. And they are considering that. I had hoped to have heard back from her by now. I called her yesterday, but didn't hear back from her. So I would hope to have more to report on that during our July meeting. But other than that, that's all I have to report. We have received some complaints, 3 complaints that are on the agenda for the executive session. So we'll talk about those in more detail when we go into executive session.
Jane, a question. Are we scheduled to meet in July and August both?
We have meetings currently scheduled for both. I know we traditionally didn't do that, but right now we've got those meetings scheduled in July and August, yes.
Thank you.
Can I raise my hand?
Tony?
Tony?
Hey, so sorry, y'all. I forgot, Dana, I wanted to mention this, but while you all were thinking about the schedule, I just wanted to let everyone know that the 5-year contract with for us ends on October 15th.
Oh,
So,
right, that's right.
To add that to your fall activity.
That's right. That's going to be, we're going to have to do a request for proposals on that, and I'll work with the city attorney's office to get that done. That's all I have to report.
There are no further questions. So next we need to hold a vote to move into executive session. So the chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Jane,
Yeah, so as a technical.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
As a technical matter, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this meeting.
Right.
And then when we are finished with the executive session, we'll reconvene this meeting using the same link. But in the meantime, everybody should just go to and I'll share the screen with you on how to do this. Everybody should just, hold on, go to the ERB website, go to the page for today's meeting, which is you could find right here and on the right, if you can see it.
Your screen's not showing.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what you want to do is on the home page, just go right here and click on ERB meeting for today. This is the link to join this meeting. That's the one that we've just used, and that's the one we'll use to come back. This is the link to join the executive session. It's going to ask you to log in with your Zoom login, and that's just for security, so nobody comes into our executive session. And then you'll be in a waiting room, and I'll let in the people who are attending the executive session.
Now, do we have to write down all that stuff, or
No,
will it?
no, you
it'll
should be able to just click on it.
Okay. All right. Okay.
All right, so off we go. I'm going to stop this meeting, and I'm going to open up the executive session.